Welcome back to the Takeout. Texas Republicans today unveiled their new proposed congressional map in hopes of creating a bigger advantage for them and Republicans writ large in the midterm elections. If this map is enacted, and that's a kind of a big if, it would create 5 House seats that President Trump carried by 10 or more points in November. Senior congressional reporter for Punchbowl News, Mutnick, joins me here in the Conversation Corner. Thanks so much for coming in. Walk my audience through the implications of this map and, importantly, what it might set off in other states.
Yeah, I mean, Texas has 38 congressional districts. Republicans currently control 25. Under this map, they could control as many as 30. So that would mean Democrats have just 8 seats in the delegation. And, the broader implication is that Republicans want to protect their House majority in what could be a challenging political environment, and they're trying to give themselves the best chance of doing that by an unprecedented, not quite unprecedented, but fairly rare mid-decade redistricting.
It is not without precedent. It's happened in Texas before, went all the way to the Supreme Court, so it is legal. However, I have read that these lines, if enacted, might prompt their own separate legal challenges.
There'll definitely be lawsuits. And, Democrats are also hoping that Republicans have spread their voters too thin and that they'll be able to, shut down some of those losses, make sure that they can keep their numbers up higher.
So I lived in Texas. I also lived in Las Vegas. There's a saying in Vegas, you probably heard it, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. There's also a phrase in Texas, don't mess with Texas. Well, this Texas thing is not going to stay in Texas, and other political interested actors are going to mess with the whole redistricting question as a result of what's now being set in motion in Texas.
Yes, this is redistricting wars now. But I think the main thing to take away is there are big blue states that have said, we're going to redistrict to try to counter what's going on in Texas, California, New York, New Jersey. But it is really difficult for big blue states to redistrict because a lot of those places have redistricting commissions that can only be undone via constitutional amendment. It's not just calling the legislature into session and having them pass a new map.
So it's much easier to do this in Texas than it is in those blue states you just ticked off. New York, New Jersey, California.
That's right. And Ohio is already on track to do a mid-decade redistricting. They have to by law.
That could benefit Republicans, possibly?
Yeah, probably 2 to 3 seats. And then, this is a White House-driven effort. The White House is pushing other states to consider making maps that are stronger than what they made in 2021 and 2022.
And so all of this creates a kind of battleground and uncertainty quite separate from what the national mood is or isn't going into the midterm elections.
That's what they're trying to do. And in Texas specifically, Republicans are banking on Latino voters continuing to move toward the right. Trump brought them into the party, but there's a question of, are they Trump voters or are they Republican voters? And they're banking in these maps that they're Republican voters.
And one of the great questions that overhangs all of this, Allie, it seems to me, is the disengagement of reliable Trump voters when he's on the ballot and when he's not on the ballot. Because if you're determined or you make a determination that those voters will show up, then these lines make sense. But if they don't, they might create an unexpected hazard.
That's right. And to get around that, Republicans who have thought about this map, have worked on this map, have looked at, who showed up to vote for the governor's race, Greg Abbott, who voted for Ted Cruz, to try to predict that. But it's always a gamble. And it could be a very challenging political environment for Republicans. It's, the midterm under a Republican president.
We've mentioned this before, and I'd like to get your impression of this. There'll be legal challenges. Would you expect that the courts would want to have these legal challenges settled in time for the 2026? Or could the waters be so muddy that the old map is actually what they default to because the legal challenges remain unresolved?
It's a good question. The legal process is very slow. And it really could go either way. I think one thing that Democrats do have, if they won't choose to use it, to block this map is to deny Republicans quorum in the legislature so that when they go to pass it, they don't have the numbers to even gavel in. That requires Democrats to leave the state at great personal and financial cost. And it can't last forever in theory.
But that's one of the things that could slow the lines being drawn and passed in the first place, which slows the ability to be challenged in court, which may make the old map the default one simply because these things haven't been sorted out.
Yeah, the timelines here are very important, and the election is coming up.
As we all know. Ali Mutnick with Punchbowl News. I appreciate the time and the expertise. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.